For set 2, the first exercise we have in the no equipment variation is an asymmetrical push-up. Here Michael has one hand elevated and the other hand on the floor. He's now going to do just a normal push-up. Having your hands on different surfaces changes the way that those two sides are being worked. You can put your hand on a stool or a couple books if you have that available, rather than a jump box like Michael has. If that's too hard, then you could go to a regular push-up with your hands flat. If that's too easy, then you can use more of a pause. For the final exercise in set 2 of day 3, we have the side plank. These same instructions work for the no equipment variation as with your normal workout. So Michael was making the point to not allow his pelvis to roll backwards or too far forwards. See how his sternum, his chest, is equal with his groin and his legs, and he's using that upper arm for balance. If this is too hard, what he's going to do is, instead of being on his feet, he's going to go on his knees, and now he's keeping himself in the exact same position, but now his legs are shorter. You should only feel this in your abdominals and some on that bottom side of the cheek, on the outer portion of the bottom leg. The way to make this harder is you can either stay here and lift the leg, or you can go to the first version if you are graduating from being on your knees, or if you started in this version, you can then come up into a regular side plank and then lift that top leg up once you're in that side plank, once you're comfortable. Hold that for the same duration as you used to.
Next, Michael is going to demonstrate the push-up with a pause. Notice how he begins in a proper push-up position. Notice then how he pauses at the bottom so that his shoulders and chest are doing extra work. If this is too challenging, instead you can elevate your hands, putting more pressure on your feet, allowing you to replicate those mechanics, but without having the extra pressure on your chest and arms. To make it harder, continue the motion with the pause, but now simply add a variation like lifting a leg as you see here, maintaining your good mechanics otherwise.
For the next 2 exercises, we are going to turn on some of these mid-back muscles. And so Michael's going to demonstrate a high pull and a waiter's carry and a shoulder press. The muscles he's trying to turn on are more here than out here. For the waiter's carry, he's going to try to turn this more. He's going to try to turn on this area. And then for the shoulder press, he's trying to turn on all this. Shouldn't feel all the activation here or out here. Here, Michael's going to demonstrate the mid-trap progression. So he's laying prone on a table. You can use a bench at home or coffee table or anywhere steady. You can even lay on the edge of your bed and just do one side at a time. Here he has his arms in the touchdown goalpost position, and now he's pinching his shoulder blades up and around his body. To get a better view at it, he should be working those mid-back muscles that we pointed out, highlighted, that I poked on Michael earlier that you saw. Notice how his elbows stay at the same level of his shoulders. The way to make this easier is that now Michael is not going to lift his arms up, but instead just kind of move his shoulders, allowing his elbows to go with it, but keeping his hands on the surface. You should notice that the motion that he's making is the same as it was before. That's how you prepare yourself to go to the next level. The way to make it harder from that touchdown field goal position, now Michael's going to keep his arms stretched out and try to reach the walls on either side of him as he brings his arms around his body. So once again, look how he's going in a position to where his shoulders are level with his hands. And also look how when he puts his arms over his head, they aren't going excessively behind him, and his shoulders are leading the way the entire time. Here, Michael is going to demonstrate the one-arm shoulder press. Rather than a dumbbell, he's using a can of wood stain. Notice how he keeps his elbow under the weight. Notice how he doesn't lean to the side as he lifts his arm. Notice how he comes back to that same starting position, not allowing his elbow to collapse down, going behind him, keeping his hand elevated slightly as he goes. Notice how as he presses, the space between his ear and his head and his shoulder disappears almost entirely, and then watch how he lowers the weight using the shoulder blade as he did before. The way to make this easier is by doing some wall slides as we've done before. The way to make it harder is by either lowering it more slowly, doing what we call the eccentric version. So now you're having to work harder as you go. Or of course, if this was still too easy, you could hold a heavier object. In order to do a waiter's carry, but without typical traditional gym equipment, Michael instead is going to first use a paint can. So a fully loaded paint can or a mostly filled paint can should actually be pretty heavy weight. So notice how he just has it braced against his forearm, and then you can see that he's most importantly keeping his elbow elevated at the same level of his shoulder, not letting his elbow drop down to really work those rib cage muscles and the back muscle, the shoulder blade muscles. So even if you don't have that, what instead you can do is take a small like stain can, and now Michael is literally going to hold it like a waiter holds his tray, and now he has to stabilize that. You can either just stand here or you could walk with it, but just for the purposes of the demonstration, notice how again he has his elbow at the same height as his shoulder. So after this, I'm going to cut into the demonstration Michael did already of doing a waiter's carry, but with the traditional equipment. Next, Michael is going to demonstrate a waiter's carry. What we would like you to consider a waiter's carry is holding your arm in this position with your elbow at the same level as your shoulder. And now you're going to walk with that object elevated like that. Notice how Michael is holding the kettlebell inverted, which then adds an extra layer of wobble to the motion. And so now he's having to really work those rib cage muscles in order to stay in a neutral position. So also notice how Michael isn't leaning back, putting too much pressure on his low back. Now, you don't need a kettlebell to be able to do this. You can do this with a dumbbell. You just won't be quite as challenging from a stability standpoint, because now, even though Michael's positioning is exactly the same, he's not having to work the left and right stability of the controlling the wobble of the dumbbell itself. The way to make this easier is that you're still going to put yourself in the same position, but what you're going to do is you're just going to stand in place. And the way to make this harder is you can either hold a heavy weight on the other hand and or increase the weight slightly. Here Michael is going to demonstrate a finisher. The point of the finisher is to use sound movement at a higher intensity in order to get your heart rate up and also get a good muscle burn. For this particular finisher, he's first going to demonstrate the split stance squat. He's going to keep most of his weight on his front leg and drive up, as notice how he's really pushing through that front leg, working more on the depth and making sure that he's keeping himself in alignment. Look how his legs stay in alignment as he goes. Notice how he kept his back straight, and now he's keeping his shoulders square as he does this motion. The next exercise in this finisher is plank up downs. Michael is first of all going to make sure that he's in a really good plank position. See how he has his feet widened out about a foot, and now he's going to lift himself up into the plank and then go back down, and he's going alternating from forearm plank to push-up plank to forearm plank. Notice how he's not wiggling in the midsection, keeping his back straight the entire time, imagining he has a book or a glass on his low back as he moves. Without equipment, or if you want to do this while on vacation or somewhere else at home, we're going to do a speed push-up. Here, we specifically elevated Michael's hands so that he can really keep the intensity up, and he's gonna go as fast as he can through that full motion while keeping himself in that even position as he's been doing all along and we've been preaching to you about as being important.